All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started, gentlemen. Good afternoon. During this session, you're just going to learn a little bit about the American Legion. They're the ones that sponsor this program. We've got several, legionnaires up here to have you will be able to ask questions to. To be in the American Legion, you've had to have served in the military. So at one time, we all served our country. So at various times and in various wars. So just a little bit about the Legion. I was hoping to show you a video, but for some reason we can't seem to find it on here. So does anybody know when the Legion started, or what kind of started the Legion? You got anything on it? Yeah.
In World War I in Paris?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It started in 1919 after the end of World War I. It was a way to help wounded and disabled veterans and brothers, and they liked that camaraderie they had when they were in the military, and they brought that back to form that organization. It also did some stuff for children and orphans of those who lost their lives fighting over in France, and then it streamlined government agencies overseeing veterans, worked with the VA system. Okay.
That's good if they know where it started.
Yeah, where did it start?
You just said.
I just said it.
No, you said that, after.
I said where the war was. Where?
I heard that Illinois was the first state to start it, so I was asking.
Or Boise State.
Boise State, yes.
But where the Legion
Post
started.
one in Paris?
Pardon me?
Post one was in Paris?
Paris,
Yes,
France.
Paris, France.
Where's the second meeting at? St. Louis,
St.
Missouri.
Louis, yeah. Yeah, May 10th, 1919 was the first one in the United States in St. Louis.
And there is a big marble monument, whatever you want to call it, across from the War Memorial down there.
It says here the first convention was held in Minneapolis in November of 1919. And then, anyone know where the national headquarters is for the American Legion? It's not far from here. Well, it's not in Illinois, but it's not far from here. That part. Where's that?
Oh, Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Where the national headquarters is in Indianapolis. No, just the first one that kind of explains a little bit about. Oh, turn that on. That's the no, I don't. You're, I can barely operate my phone. Figured out how to turn it on.
One of you could have figured this out by now.
That's what I was thinking.
It's turning back on. I don't, we just gotta get it.
I take that all I did.
You got any Boy Scouts out there? No, that was the first program American Legion sponsored with Boy Scouts for children.
Because we advocate to help take care of veterans in their service, but also one of our 4 pillars is to advocate and help equip the youth, and that is what Boise State is, one of the elements.
One of the many other things.
How we advocate American Legion baseball. These are youth programs.
Now, how many of you are Eagle Scouts? Excellent. That's on your 20-some years ago. Pardon? 94 out of League.
Yeah, this year is the 100th anniversary of American Legion baseball. It started in 1925 in Millstadt, South Dakota. The first American Legion baseball. They're having a big tournament up there. We were discussing it earlier this morning. They're having a tournament up there with like 4 different states.
Which back in its days where most of the pros used to come from.
Most of the pros used to play. Lou Gehrig, everybody here, everybody knows
Yeah.
who Lou Gehrig is.
Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra.
89 Hall of Famers played American Legion baseball.
It's way before your time, I know. It's way before my time too.
Some more Kirkland played it too.
I think Mike Trout did too.
There we go.
Are we good? Yeah, go ahead and play it. Okay, we're just gonna watch a quick video here.
Move out of the way so they
Yeah.
can see.
It's like 12 minutes long. Get sound.
Hi, I'm Jarek.
Hi, I'm Lorna.
We're going on a journey to discover the legacy of the American Legion.
And how that history of the Legion is shaping the vision for our...
You're not saint. Welcome to the 21st century.
future. Years of service to community, state, and nation.
That's a lot of American Legion meetings and resolutions, special events and hearings, everything from feeding flood victims to writing the GI Bill and fighting for a stronger VA.
Veterans of every era, active duty personnel, students, teachers, doctors, politicians, and each other.
But how do you tie it all together?
Well, I do know one common thread.
What would that be?
If you stitch it all together, there's a tapestry here. The American Legion was built to make a stronger America. Healthcare for veterans, military preparedness, disaster relief, mentorship of young people, and a better understanding of who we are as a free nation. Put it all together and you have a stronger nation.
I think you're going to have to show me what you mean.
Okay. Did you like history when you were in school?
Actually, I prefer making history. That's why I joined the Army.
Well, you're in the right organization then. The American Legion has been making history for over 100 years, and we're not done yet.
What do you think we're going to discover by looking back at all the accomplishments of the American Legion's past?
I think we'll find the reasons veterans are still serving America. We'll have a better understanding of why we do what we do. Did you know the GI Bill was written by veterans for veterans?
You know, I never really thought about it until it was time for me to actually use it.
Was it at the back of your mind when you enlisted?
Well, I'm sure it was. I mean, free college is a great incentive to serve.
Well, in 1943, it was at the front of the minds of World War I veterans in the American Legion. The GI Bill was written as a response to a crisis. Disabled vets were coming home to virtually no support network, no legitimate chance to restart their lives. They needed help, and the GI Bill was written to provide it. And it certainly did that, but no one could have anticipated all the GI Bill would do to change and strengthen America. All of America, not just veterans.
I never really thought about it like that. I guess it goes back to what you were saying, that the American Legion was built to make America stronger. If you don't treat veterans fairly when they get back from a fight, America doesn't get stronger. And future generations won't be that motivated to serve in the military if they think that veterans are just cannon fodder.
But if you want evidence of American strength, you have to take a look at what all the GI Bill accomplished for everyone, not just veterans. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944 touched about everyone's lives. Soon after it passed, people of all classes were able to go to college, start a family, buy a house, and start living what they called the Great American Dream.
I guess it started with a devotion to mutual helpfulness, like it says in the preamble of the Constitution of the American Legion. It's veterans serving veterans.
And veterans strengthening America.
No better example than the GI Bill.
Brought to you by the American Legion.
You know, our post, Post 43 here in Hollywood, California, much like more than 5,000 other posts across this country in communities large and small, was chartered in 1919 by newly discharged World War I veterans. And it's been running strong ever since.
Also, like every new American Legion post that started in the first year, we soon established our own identity based on the local community.
That identity, of course, being Hollywood, is show business.
Ours soon became the American Legion Post to the Stars.
Clark Gable, Humphrey Bogart, Mickey Rooney, Red Buttons, Mary Pickford and Shirley Temple.
Most of them were veterans like us. Others were just supportive members of the community who appreciated what the American Legion stands for. Veterans, patriotism, strong military, youth and community service.
You know, that's what set the American Legion apart from other veteran service organizations prior to it, is that commitment to the community, a willingness to fulfill needs.
All the way back to the immediate aftermath of the American Revolution, wartime veterans have been creating and operating associations, usually to have a voice in government, which in the earliest years of the Republic was not well equipped, politically willing, or all that interested in assisting those who had been called to arms.
There was Daniel Shays, leader of the so-called Shays Rebellion. Shays, a patriot who enlisted to fight the British for American independence, had been wounded fighting for the Continental Army. When he returned to civilian life, he faced debt and taxes that accrued during his time in the service. Like many Revolutionary War veterans, he stood to lose his land and everything he owned because he served in the military. His situation was shared by many of America's first veterans. So they assembled about 4,000 strong, and Shays led a sometimes violent protest movement to achieve protections against foreclosure and past due payments from the Army.
In the late 18th and early 19th century, veterans discovered that veterans associated together could promote change and fairness in the nation they fought to defend and create.
Some groups were officer only, like the Society of the Cincinnati, whose first president general was George Washington. And they typically looked out for former officers. Ordinary veterans of enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines were typically on their own, considered a separate class of veteran. One Revolutionary War veteran, a man named Jeremiah Ryan, was eventually deemed by the government to be unemployable due to what was described as debility of nerves.
Today we would call his condition post-traumatic stress disorder.
He was awarded $5 a month in disability compensation 10 years after his honorable discharge. Prior to that, his psychological condition was so severe he could never have applied for relief. And if he disagreed with the government's ruling, he had no right to appeal. Other veterans associations sprang up in the 19th and early 20th century, typically to lobby fair economic and medical relief for those who had been called to war. Often, they were local and state groups. The Grand Army of the Republic and Nationwide Association of Civil War Union Veterans assumed broader community responsibilities, but naturally did not admit into its membership their former adversaries, who formed their own organization, United Confederate Veterans. The American Legion borrowed some ideas from the Grand Army of the Republic, local post and state departments, membership eligibility regardless of race or gender, annual encampments that were like national conventions, and the promotion of patriotism in schools and communities. The Grand Army of the Republic and the United Confederate Veterans also brought to their communities and the nation an annual day of remembrance for those who died under arms. They called it Decoration Day, which later became Memorial Day, which the American Legion recognizes in ceremonies worldwide today.
The Legion also learned from the Grand Army of the Republic that partisan politics and veterans advocacy do not work well together in Washington. And when the last GAR member died in 1956, so did the GAR.
These would all be lessons for the American Legion, which was officially established March 15th through 17th in 1919 in Paris, France, by battle-weary troops still in Europe waiting to come home after the end of World War I.
It's not that well known that there was an American Legion even before the Paris Caucus of 1919. American Legion Incorporated. That earlier American Legion, which existed between 1915 and January 1917, was part of the preparedness movement that opposed U.S. neutrality and isolationism during the early years of the Great War in Europe, and began training for the possibility of American involvement. American Legion Incorporated quickly grew to more than 24,000 members nationwide.
American Legion Incorporated turns its membership roster over to the federal government in January of 1917. A little over 3 months later, the United States finally entered the Great War with the stated mission to make the world safe for democracy. Members of American Legion Incorporated and Plattsburgh Camp alumni were quickly recruited as officers and specialists in the American Expeditionary Forces. Among those officers and specialists with American Legion Incorporated and Plattsburgh lineage were Lieutenant Colonel Theodore Roosevelt Jr., son of the nation's 26th president, Colonel William Donovan, future father of U.S. intelligence, Hamilton Fish III, who commanded the famed 369th Infantry Regiment of all African American troops, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas W. Miller, a former congressman from Delaware, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Fisher Wood, an engineer and author who was wounded and gassed while serving as a major with the 88th Infantry Division, Colonel G. Edward Buxton, the commanding officer of the famed Medal of Honor recipient, Sergeant Alvin York.
These Plattsburgh-trained officers would gather after the November 11, 1918 armistice that ended World War I and conceive a new association of veterans, one that would fight for military preparedness, support veterans in need, mentor young people, selflessly serve communities, and advance the ideas of freedom, justice, and democracy. These officers determined that military rank, branch of service, gender, or race would have no bearing on membership in the new association. They determined that it would be completely nonpartisan.
And they decided to call it the American Legion.
I just wanted to show you the first one, just as a quick background on the pictures. So, I invite the rest of the body to come on back up. The rest of the time, I'm just gonna, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Like I said, I'll go first, and we'll give a little brief history of our military background and stuff, and then we'll just kind of have a question and answer for everyone. So. My name is Mac Mead. I've been on staff here at Boise State, I think it's my 36th or 37th year. I came to Boise State back in 1983, and then I I was here for about 5 years, joined the U.S. Coast Guard in 1987, and then I retired in 2009. So I was in the Coast Guard for 22 years, and I missed about 5 or 6 years while I was in the Coast Guard, but other than that, I've been here at Boise State ever since around 1993 or 4. The Coast Guard back in the day, they would give me what was called permissive orders to come back. That's how much they thought of this program. So I didn't even have to use my vacation or leave, as we called it then, to come here. So they give me orders to come here and be a part of this program. I grew up on a farm, a little small town in Catlin, Illinois, about 50 miles currently reside, since I retired from the Coast Guard 2009, then I got into the gas and oil business. I work on pipelines now. I run an operation, I'm an operations manager for one of the oldest pipelines in the country, called Buckeye. So I currently reside in Crown Point, Indiana.
It's hard to follow. So I'm Matt. You see me running around wrangling the militia. I enlisted when I was your age and with the Army. Had a tremendous experience. Career cut rather short. Well, I served my full enlistment, but cut a little short because I had cancer. And I'm here because I survived, for one. But something I'd really like to say to each one of you, this is not a recruitment tactic, but education-wise, tremendous benefits. So I served shy of 5 years, but during those 5 years, I took some classes and tests while I was on active duty, which was all paid for. And then I used GI Bill, which was referenced up there, to pay for all of my educational expenses through college and grad school. In total, by the time I was 30 years old, I had completed 8 years worth of higher education, all paid for through my Army service. And the VA took care of all the medical expenses. I don't think it's quite eclipsed $1 million that they've sank into my head, but it's getting up there. So tremendous benefits, a tremendous experience. I was hoping that I would have continued service, that I was going to reclass, but it didn't work due to the cancer. The good news is that I survived, and I got to reclass to be a minister. So I served in a couple different ministry positions, most of which in disaster relief. One of our cornerstones besides youth is disaster relief, mentioned there before. And I collaborate with dozens of other organizations besides the ministry I serve, or within the ministry I serve in. One of the largest veteran-only organizations that does really hard work in disaster relief is Team Rubicon. Has anybody ever heard of Team Rubicon? Only one. Tremendous organization. It's only veterans. But so the Army changed my life in so many ways. I'll keep it short because there's other stories to tell. So I'm not suggesting you should enlist in the Army. However, you make the most of what we got. And I'd like to think I'm still continuing to make the most of reinvesting in our society by doing volunteer ministries and being here with you this week.
Mark, that's a big part of it, I'm sure you said.
Which part? Now.
My name's Mark. I joined for 3 reasons. Right out of high school, my oldest brother served in Vietnam, and my oldest sister served during the Vietnam era. I'm considered a Vietnam era veteran, but only by the last 6 weeks of the date from that time I joined. I'm really a Cold War veteran. But the other 2 reasons, one was education and travel. And I've been in 22 different countries, and 20 of those is because of my time in service. I had 2 jobs. My first one was at Fort Ord, California. I was air traffic controller. Then I got transferred to Germany, and they had many of them at the air base that I was at. So I became a helicopter crew chief working on a Huey, and I was assigned to an amazing group. We got to fly big VIPs around, dignitaries, and I was assigned to a 2-star general. So, but I served from 75 through 79, and I'm always asked one question: would you do it again? Without a doubt, I would do it again. So it's one of the best experiences I've had, and to this day, and all these guys will agree, you will always be family. So.
Well, my name is Mike. My last name is Funneman. If you really want to know that, you can call me Mike Funny Man. I don't care. A lot of people have. I'm from a small town called Teutopolis, which is about 30 miles south of here. If some of you are in central Illinois, you know it's T-Town.
Title town.
Titletown, whatever. So that's where I grew up. I enlisted in the Army National Guard in 1984 in November as an 11 Charlie. That's an indirect fire infantryman, otherwise known as mortar. To me, it's the best job in the Army. Loved it. Loved it all. I enjoyed everything about it. I think mainly because I was in a good platoon. And we were tight, we trained hard, worked hard. Most National Guardsmen back in that era, they didn't have the chance to go to very many countries. I went to 10 of them within 12 years. Our unit got deployed, like the Philippines, went to Japan, went to Ukraine, went to Bulgaria, and then in 2002 we were deployed to Europe to help with Force Con right after 9/11. So I did not see any combat after that. I did retire in 2006 after 22 years. I enjoyed my time. I loved well, I won't say every minute of it because there were some times that now I laugh about it. And I'm not going to go into all those stories. If you ever want to hear some stories down in the next 4 days, come and I'll talk to you about some stories. But I would do it all over again also, even with my 3 broken ankles and the pain I'm constantly in nowadays. I used on the civilian side, I worked for Sherwin-Williams for 20 years until my ankles got too bad and they put me on disability. So now I go to the VA a lot of times, about once every 6 weeks, get shots in my ankles to help for a little bit. And just like him, I'm probably close to $1 million too with all the surgeries I've had. That's all I got. I've been a member of the Legion for 20 years before I go on, for 24, I'm sorry. And I'm currently 23rd District Commander, which basically covers most of the counties west of the Metro East St. Louis, south for about 10 counties, 35 posts I'm in charge of. I help out. I enjoy it, love it. I'm going to do another year of it. You know, I plan on going through the next level of chairs. So the American Legion to me is it's a continuation of my service. I meet some great people, and that's what I really love about the American Legion. You know, I've talked to quite a few of you, and it's great talking to you. I really appreciate being here.
So you consider me a great person?
Well, sometimes.
These stories are kind of hard for me to follow. They're great, but I'm the only one up here that got drafted. Any of you ever heard of the draft? Yes. Well, your grandmothers and grandfathers probably picked me and decided it was time for me to go see some other parts of the world, but I would not trade like them. I would not trade my experience for anything. I was in for 3 years. I got extended because Vietnam was getting pretty hot when 1969, and I had to go back to Fort Hood, and I trained kids in tanks. I was a tank commander. I was a platoon sergeant, and to this day, I don't know where a lot of them went, but I'm hoping they're still around or whatever. But they got deployed right after we graduated them. So I'm a 51-year continuous member of the American Legion. And I spent 19 months in Okinawa. Didn't have to go to Vietnam. And just know that we get to do today because of these guys and everybody else what they did to take pride in their country and serve their nation and made us the greatest nation in the world. So if you ever think you want to go someplace else, I'll buy you a ticket, but I'll tell you what, if you're one way, you have to get your way back there. You'll find out that it's not really, grass is not greener on the other side of that fence. So, thank you, Matt.
we did or anything?
Please ask him.
Yeah, ask them.
Don't be afraid.
And like Mike and Mark, I have been I've served the district commander of the 22nd district down southern Illinois, west, east of St. Louis, Illinois. And I got honorably picked Roy Smith, who you will meet Thursday, will be our next state commander. And he has chosen me to be one of his aides, which I will travel with him for the whole year, wherever he needs to go or whatever. That's quite an honor. Because he could have picked anybody in the state of Illinois. I'm one of the two he picked, so.
I've been with the Legion, July will be my 39th year. I should have more than that, but the first 9 years, I was only a volunteer with our local post. And because of, like I said, I caught the end of it. So I never served in the war, so it took me 9 years to think that I should be eligible for the Legion. So, you got a question?
I was just wondering,
You have to speak up, buddy.
what part of the service or American Legion would you say like allowed you guys to bond the most, especially with the people you may have served with or those you connect with within American Legion?
Our local posts.
Yeah.
So most of you were sponsored by a local post, and that's made up of just veterans. And we also have what we call the American Legion family. So the guys you see wearing these hats, even though they're different colors, white indicates higher leadership. We also have the American Legion Auxiliary, which they are directly related to, often spouses. They are to augment or support the American Legion. You also see a lighter pale blue color. That's the American Legion sons, and they're usually direct descendants of sons, grandsons. And how many of you have one of your parents or grandparents served in the U.S. Armed Forces? So you guys are eligible to be members of the Sons of the American Legion.
Be a part of this family.
Keyword family. Some of my closest friends, such as this guy here, we even though we're not part of the same post, we operate like a family. I'm constant in communication. We're checking on each other. Oh, shucks, Judy fell and broke her shoulder. Okay, I'm going to send out a text to everybody. Pray for Judy. She's going into surgery tomorrow to repair the shoulder. We're doing all sorts of different functions together. It's a blast. Actually, I have a lot of fun. To get back to having fun with you guys, and I get to go have fun with my post on Saturday for Flag Day festivities.
Yeah, I just wondered if you enjoyed your time in Okinawa, because my dad was an Atsugi himself, post 9/11, he was in the Navy. So I was just wondering if you, what you think about Okinawa and like all the deployments you've done throughout your career in the armed forces?
It was okay. I was a single young man, probably 20 years old, and pay wasn't too good, but food wasn't too bad, and it was okay. Luckily, I didn't have to go to war. And people look at you and wonder why I didn't go. The federal government, which they owned us.
You follow your orders.
And the orders that came down sent me to Okinawa, sent Mike on all his terms, sent these guys on their plate. Some people volunteered to go back or whatever, but most of it, your orders tell you where to go. So I did enjoy it. Yeah.
How was like the readjustment period after getting back from your service?
Well, it wasn't too pretty for us, okay? And I don't know how many stories you've heard or whatever. Even though I wasn't in Vietnam, I come home, when I come out of Fort Hood, Texas, I wore my Class A uniform home as my dress green. And I come from a small town of Georgetown, Illinois, which is not too far from here, close to Mac. And myself and another young man that played basketball, football, and everything else, Georgetown, 3,500 people. And they would not allow us to join the American Legion at that time because they said, well, you guys weren't in no war. That was just a conflict, you weren't in one, you're not allowed to join. And Lyman Ardulinas is now a retired state policeman, and he, went through all the chairs in the American Legion. They formed a post in Springfield called State Police Post, Legion Post. I think it's 1922 or something, the number of it.
As for me, I was deployed to Europe after 9/11. So I did not see combat, but I was married and had 3 kids at the time. And so we spent almost a year there. And the readjustment itself, it was hard because they weren't used to me being around. You know, they were, who's this guy that's in my house right now? For me, it was an adjustment because I was away from them. You know, I was able, you know, when I wasn't working, I could just up and go wherever I wanted. Didn't have to worry about my kids because I was overseas. So it took about 2 or 3 months before we all got where we were back in our normal routine before we left. Now, my brother went to Iraq and Afghanistan. He was in my unit after I retired. He stayed in, and he took him a lot longer. Just being in combat, he said, it's so much different. You know, the stress level is so much higher, so it took him a lot longer to re-assimilate back into society.
And it's different from every person. Depending what your job was, if you was in a zone or not in a zone, and even yourself. Me, when I got out, I wanted to take 3 months off, get to know my family and readjust and that. But I worked for UPS a year before I went in the service, and when I got out, I told them I want to take a few months, and within a couple of weeks, they called and said, we just lost a driver, we need you back now. So 2 weeks later, I was back at work. So, yeah, so I had a long vacation, but Matt touched on the sons of the American Legion, that each and every one of you know it. I encourage you when you go back, because I belong to 5 different organizations, and one is the Sons. I'm a dual member of the Legion and the Sons. It's a big part of our future now, because all of us as veterans are getting older and older, and we can only choose veterans to join because you served in the country. The Sons, there's many, many more of you. So go back to your post and see if they have a Sons unit and join. You know, try 1 year, you know, and see.
Could you guys talk about like being in different countries? And could you talk about how you guys traveled to like different areas and what that experience was like?
Well, like I said, I've been in 20 different countries. When I was stationed in Europe, I took full advantage to travel on my own. I met my wife there. Actually, when I changed jobs, my wife was my replacement. We went out that first night and been together until I lost her 5 years ago, 40-some years. So, great woman, great 41 years with her. I'm very pleased and blessed to meet her. But we got married in Germany. We honeymooned in Athens, Greece. So, and some of the countries I visited was because, like I said, I flew out a 2-star general. He had different meetings in different countries too. So.
The U.S. Coast Guard, that's what you're doing. You're guarding the coast of the U.S. Not always. I mean, we have Coast Guard ships all over the world, but for the most part, that branch of the military pretty much stays at home. And we're not. What department does the Coast Guard fall under? You guys know that? Yeah. Homeland Security. Yeah, we're the only ones that do not fall under the Department of Defense, under the Department of Homeland Security, which means we hold a little different things. Anybody ever heard of posse comitatus? Know what that means? Yeah, Carter does. But, yeah, that's why Normally, when they deploy, well, for instance, the National Guard is deployed in California. You can't deploy the United States military on American soil against American citizens, only foreign. That's the difference. And the Coast Guard, that's why we fall under the Department of Homeland Security. We have law enforcement authority in the United States, where the other branches of the military do not.
There's one thing I'd like to bring out, and I hope Matt and Mike don't mind me using them as examples. But the biggest injury right now, almost in the military, you can't see. PTSD, just like Matt. You didn't know him, I told you a story. He's a disabled veteran, you wouldn't know it. Mike, you would. So if you see it, someone get out and park in a handicap spot or whatever, and Matt walks just like you or I do, don't criticize that man, because what you don't know is eating him up. And God bless Mike for what he's had to go through. So just remember, it's a disease you can't see that's ugly.
It took one of my friends, it took him 4 years after his deployment to get the courage up enough to pull the trigger in his own life. Nobody saw that. I saw it, tried to reach out. This is one of the reasons the Legion also leads a campaign called Be the One. You ever seen or heard of that catchphrase, Be the One? Is that each and every one of us, not just veterans, but you too, can be the one to help encourage, to reach out and say, you're not alone, brother. Hang in there. How are you doing today? Hey, let's take a walk. How about let's take a trip? Do something together. You can be the one to dial that number down. At the peak, so I'm told, the average day in America, 23 veterans committed suicide every day. So in essence, by that average, just the time you will sit in this seat at this little single seminar, at least one veteran would have committed suicide. But you can be the one for somebody in your community to reach out to. You don't see that wound, but at least encourage them. It's like, hey, how you doing today? Good to see you, brother. Encourage them along. Be the one person maybe in their life that helps them over that hurdle. Even if it's only for one day at a time.
And that includes high school. You see, there's, those loners. You know, I know when I was a kid, I thought, yeah, he's a loner, he's kind of different. But you never know what they're going through. So, you know, everybody has their own demons. I got a shirt on, I got a shirt at home that says, you don't know what anybody's going through until you're in their shoes. So, you know, just be nice to everybody. But if I could, I want to go back to your question about countries. I visited one third world country, which was the Philippines, and you can imagine how poor that was. I also visited two former Soviet bloc countries, Bulgaria and Ukraine. When I was in the Ukraine for 2 weeks, I noticed I had never, for the first week, never saw a squirrel, never saw a rabbit, never saw any kind of ground animal or anything. And I asked our liaison, I said, don't you guys have squirrels and rabbits? He goes, no, they've all been eaten because we don't have hardly any food. And they're not wrong, because most of the time they gave us grass soup to eat. I lost 20 pounds those last 2 weeks. I always go back and lose some more, but you don't realize what we got here. We can complain all we want, but we're still better off than 90% of the world. Okay, just to let you know that. I mean, we have our problems, and we need to fix it. But other countries have those same problems. You may not hear about it, but we're still better off than most of them. Okay.
I've had a lot of unique experiences with my travels in one. I had the opportunity to visit the Berlin Wall when it was up. And that was an experience of its own. And see, back then, the checkpoint charter. So, and Hitler's original bunker, you know, albums and albums of photos and all that stuff. country takes care of the world. And we protect the world. The world is a beautiful place to be. But in my opinion, we are still in the best country of that world. This world.
And one other thing, to go back to what Matt was talking about, being one, last year at our national convention, I took the training out of Connecticut University, I believe it's where it was at. And the biggest thing I took out of it, Matt, was if you can talk to that person for 10 minutes, 9 times out of 10, that's long enough to get helped, for you to help him, or whatever, talk him down, or talk her down, or whatever. But in 10 minutes, you can save that life. So if you talk for 10 minutes to someone that you see is struggling, it'll make a big difference. Someone has a question?
I was gonna ask, during your time serving, what was like the biggest lesson you learned, or like what's something you still live by today, which you learned during your time?
I can relate to that. One of the first months I was probably out and adjusting to civilian life. I wasn't stationed, I wasn't in combat or anything extreme, but I worked extreme hours, like 150 hours a week. Like,
Tell them what you did, yeah, tell them what you did.
I was in the 510th Sentinel, the 2 Medal soldier. So I trained the best of the best of the best of the world to be guard post #1. So I routinely trained West Point graduates how to shine shoes and hand stitch and walk that special distinctive walk. But more important point.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to know what you did.
So adjusting, getting out of the Army, that was the norm. I didn't get a day off for 2 years straight, not a single day of leave, nothing. I got the bank that towards the end. But perspective. I knew what hard work was, and I know what suck is like. I know how bad suck can be. So I've been in some pretty low spots during my service. Yes, in this classroom, I could hear some freshman griping about, I was probably only not much longer in school than he was, griping about it. He's so stressed out about this test and been up half the night studying for it. It's like, drop and do 21 push-ups. You don't know what stress is, soldier. Grow up. Perspective. Yeah, prepare for your tests, and yeah, you're gonna work hard, but perspective, we live in the greatest country on earth, and there are people out there protecting our borders, there are people out there doing hard work, and the perspective of recognizing, yeah, this is challenging, but other people can do it, I can do it, and it's gonna be okay. Take a deep breath.
Leadership, work ethic, you learn a lot of that, camaraderie. Any branch of the military, you're gonna have all of those. So it's taken me a long way, even when you get out, that if you do, happen to choose the military, a branch of service in your future, it'll carry you a long way. Yeah.
For those of you that decided to enlist right after high school, what pushed you to enlist right after graduating?
For me, it was an adventure, a way of getting out of a small town. I wasn't ready for college.
I went to college for a couple. I was different. I went to college for a couple of years before I enlisted. But yeah, it's different for everybody's the other.
And like I said, mine was education and travel. And I'm from a big family. I have 6 brothers and 3 sisters. So my parents went to Ford College. So education is the big reason why I joined. And yes, I went to college during the night school. Almost every post has a university that backs them, that offers classes for whatever education you want.
As for me, I always knew that I was interested in joining the military. I had uncles that served in World War II in Korea, and all of my uncles except for 2 and my dad did not serve. My dad couldn't, he was 4F. But I always knew I wanted to serve. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, which branch or active duty or guard, and then I decided I was just going to go into guard so I can go to school at the same time. And that's what I did.
You had a question?
Okay, quickly, we're about out of time.
Outside of the Be the One program, what are the best organizations or ways to support veterans' mental health?
Well, the American Legion, almost every bill that's been passed for the veterans, their families, and the youth, and that has always been behind that, and including the Be the One bill, support and everything. That Be the One is pretty personal to me because less than a year ago, a close friend of mine took his life, and Legionnaire also. The American Legion is very supportive in so many ways, from the bills to your local families.
And you all being good citizens, we don't necessarily need you, we're not encouraging you to enlist. That's your own particular decision. But you being good, productive citizens and volunteering and being pillars of your communities, your families, that is being the one, reaching out to somebody you see struggling, serving a cause greater than yourself, serving society. That is the greater good. Whether it's in the military or not, you can be the one. You can be the one to help other people, period, whether that's in the military or not. So take your experiences this week from volunteerism and carry it for the rest of your life. That's why we're here this week. We're encouraging you to carry that tradition on.
Now, even if you don't want to join the military, but want to be a part, then you can become sons. But you don't even have to become sons. Just go to your local post and volunteer. Go to the VFW. Go to your church.
Just remember the golden rule. Just remember the golden rule. And you'll turn out pretty damn good, I believe.
One thing that the military did teach me as a young kid, respect. And to this day, I live by that word.
All right, gentlemen, well, we're out of time here. I thank you for your